Hey, Friendo, Steve here.
Hey, Larson.
Welcome back to Steve and Larson's Pro Wrestling Podcast, ruining pro wrestling podcasting since 2014. Doing something a little bit different. I like when we're able to get out of the comfort zone, the routine of every week. We do Raw, we do AEW NXT, we do SmackDown. You know, and today we get to do WWE's Unreal, a peek behind the curtain, Larson.
Well, that's what they said. There's something comforting to a degree about the routine, but there's that spark of excitement that might be missing because of that. And I don't know if WWE Unreal is necessarily going to provide that spark of excitement, but it's something different to talk about.
There's a lot to talk about. That's good.
Yeah. You know? This is positioned as WWE's first real peek behind the curtain, in depth, in terms of how what we see on TV is produced and put out there. And in some respects, I think in small doses and little details, you can say we got that. You know, whenever WWE produces these things, especially when it goes up on a platform like Netflix, and they take time to explain what a baby face is and what a heel is.
We had to wait like 4 episodes before they told us what a baby face and heel are.
Yeah. My question is then always, who was this made for? Mm-hmm. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm, yeah.
Because we had this discussion with the Mr. McMahon documentary. Who was this made for? It wasn't necessarily made for people who really, really follow wrestling, because most of the stuff in there is pretty well known. Not all, but most.
Yeah.
And so when I pose that same question to myself after watching Unreal, who is this made for? Is this really made for the hardcore wrestling fans? That's still, I think, somewhat debatable. You know, I always look at basically everything WWE does as a bid for mainstream acceptance. And I think one of the primary goals of this was to show, hey, this isn't some seat of the pants type operation we got going here. This is a coordinated, highly orchestrated television production that goes down 52 weeks a year that maybe few television shows can really rival in terms of the intricacy of the production on a weekly basis plus the schedule. And I think in that regard, all right, they accomplished that, because we did get a glimpse, more so than maybe we have in the past, in terms of the production aspect of it. And in a lot of respects, that's what I found most fascinating, particularly the interplay between what the producer does, what the talent does, and what the TV truck does in terms of communicating the story of the match to the viewing audience.
Yeah, I think I agree with all that. In terms of your question, who is this made for? Well, let me ask you this. Let me counter that with a question. Raw on Netflix, if the numbers are to be believed, it does all right. Like it usually gets above 2 million with whatever metric they said we get via WrestleNomics or whatever. I think this week it was up to like 2.5, 2.7, something like that. It was significantly higher than I think it usually is. I have to double check that.
SmackDown's rating were higher last Friday.
SmackDown was 1.7, yeah.
And they thought maybe because the Hogan.
Okay, that would make sense. That would make sense.
Maybe that might have bolstered the ratings somewhat.
When you refer to, because even there's some debate about like what's a hardcore, what's a casual. Would you consider the 2 million people that watch WWE Raw on Netflix in that number? Would you consider that 2 million hardcore fans?
No.
Okay.
My definition of hardcore fan is people who watches the product plus follows the behind the scenes news and whatnot. Someone who just watches wrestling, I don't necessarily consider them a hardcore fan. You know what I mean?
This, in my opinion, this served 2 purposes. Really, I mean, who this was made for is, number one, for the 2 million people that watch it on Netflix, because they know that that's something that people will watch, and you'll probably multiply that by 2 or 3 because it's not a slice of episodic serialized television. It is a big picture. Oh, how is this made? That's really interesting. Let's see the wrestlers say fuck a lot. That's really interesting to see them do that because they did that a lot.
That was a takeaway, yeah.
But I think, and I don't know who exactly this would be, but you can track I would even go more broad than you in terms of hey, we're going to show people that we're a legitimate business. It's a real film, Jack. You know, we're going to show people that we are. That's a Boogie Nights reference. We're going to show people that we're this big production. I think it goes to Triple H's main thesis since he took over. And I think this is probably something that was discussed on the road with the Click is we are held back by the term, oh, that's fake. And so there has been a concerted effort. And I'm kind of curious, and I think it wouldn't shock me if he was, given that it was in NXT. But this isn't unprecedented. They did breaking ground in NXT, which has parallels in terms of the approach and blurring that line between like, okay, we're going to give you a peek behind the curtain, but there's definitely some shit that we do not want you to see and we will not talk about. And for me, the biggest example of that in Unreal is the Rock stuff, is the creative process by which, you know, they ended up on doing what they did with The Rock. We'll talk about that in a second. But Triple H, I think, has an understanding or believes, and to be honest, I kind of agree with him, that when you clue people in to, hey, this is a big performance, you take away the stigma of, oh, it's fake. Because then you can say, well, yeah, so is Game of Thrones, and so is, you know, Walking Dead, and so are these other things. Yeah, it's a performance. You know, you wouldn't refer to Game of Thrones as fake. You'd refer to it as a narrative fictional TV show. And that's, I think, what he wants to accomplish to bring wrestling into the modern age where Vince McMahon had held it back for such a long time.
And part of bringing it into the modern age, I think, is a bid to get it accepted more from mainstream audiences.
Yeah, absolutely.
Because that stigma wouldn't, you know, if you get rid of that stigma of, oh, it's fake, then perhaps more people be intrigued by the product if it's viewed strictly as, oh, this is narrative fiction like anything else that I watch on TV.
Absolutely. Yeah. They're not trying to, you know, we're not trying to compete with UFC. We're trying to compete with AMC. You know, we're trying to compete with HBO. We're trying to, hey, AMC had Mad Men on, okay?
They did. I'm not trying to dog AMC. It's just on the fly. You came up with something that worked. That was pretty funny.
I like that.
Yeah.
Oh man. Every once in a while I got it. So that's who they're trying to compete with. And I think Triple H's ultimate goal at this point, you know what this is made for? The people who are in charge of doling out Emmys.
Yep.
That's what this is. I think he wants that. It's like Michael Corleone and Godfather. He just wants to be legitimate and he wants to be seen that way because you're absolutely right. That's best for business. That grows the product. When you suddenly get rid of, oh, this is fake, and you pivot to, God dang, look at the performances here and look at the story and look at, again, to your point, look at how elaborate the production is and what goes into it. And these are real people behind the performers. I think that is the goal, you know, and if that means, hey, let's get this out to the, I think similarly, I don't know about like the I don't know where we landed on who the McMahon documentary is for. I think the McMahon documentary was for people who were like, man, I used to watch Mr. McMahon and battle it out with Steve Austin. Let's watch this, and then you just get this, you know.
Well, anecdotally, I can attest to that because there's been a few people I've talked to who watch even just kind of in passing during the Attitude Era, and they saw that in Netflix. It's like, oh, I'll check that out.
Yeah. It's kind of the biggest version of Dark Side of the Ring. You know, it's like instead of hot stuff Eddie Gilbert, you get, you know. Did you watch the Eddie Gilbert one, by the way?
No.
It's pretty interesting. He was always an interesting character to me. It was an interesting one. You know.
Yeah.
I
have them on my DVR. I just haven't got a chance to check them out.
I've been slowly going through them. I watched the Superstar one recently, and then I watched the Eddie Gilbert one. I actually bought that one because it wasn't just Vice put out the Superstar one. Anyways. So yeah, I think that's, you know, do you think now what we were promised with, you know, the setup of this, the advertising for this in advance when we first heard about it, oh, they're going to let us into the writer's room. They're going to show how it's all done. Did they accomplish that goal?
I guess that depends if you think what was presented to us was 100% across the board authentic or not. I know Fightful Select just had a thing today about what people backstage in WWE view as potentially kind of I don't use the word scripted per se, but situations that were created manufactured, that's the word, for this. And the one example there, kind of the only example, was after Charlotte won the Rumble, that the entire women's locker room greeted her backstage to celebrate with her.
That was a very forced moment, by the way. You could that was the one you can actually tell, yeah.
And then when watching it, they have little, you could do 5 episodes of probably really intriguing shit of just, Triple H, Ed Koskey, I think Ryan Dunn was back there, Pritchard, Road Dogg.
Rob Fee, yeah.
Yeah, Rob Fee just bouncing ideas off each other. The tension that rises from that. We get so few kind of small snippets to that. And even those, they're framed in a way that, this is speculation, and framed in a way, like, do you think there's really a conversation that starts, all right, who's going to win the Rumble? It almost seems like these could have easily been shot 4 weeks ago. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I don't disagree with you on both counts, because I even if they were able to manufacture a facsimile of what that's actually like, I imagine it's probably a lot more rousing. It's probably, a bit more loud in there.
You think it'd be a much more spirited debates in terms of pitching ideas, but maybe in the Triple H era, it's not. Maybe
that could be that, I don't know, because you're right. If somebody told me that was, hey, we got to film some stuff, let's sort of, try to manufacture our conversation for who's going to win the Rumble. And then, hey, Koski, remember when you mentioned the thing about Chelsea coming in? Go ahead and bring that up, and then everybody will kind of non-react to it. They'll give it like a light chuckle. On the other hand, people seem kind of like tired, and I kind of feel like it might have been real. I feel like there was nothing about that came off as disingenuous, even though it could have been manufactured. Mm-hmm. I feel like they probably got a decent approximation of what that writer's room is like for those moments. But yeah, all right, who's going to win the Rumble? Was kind of silly. But you're right. That stuff was incredibly interesting, even if it was manufactured, because when they're going over specifically the Punk Seth Rollins stuff, mm-hmm. and Triple H is like, you know what, I think it makes more sense. Everybody wants Punk. They know Punk is a gravy train.
The irony now of Triple H being #1 Punk fan.
Right. Yeah, no, absolutely. And that was one of the main threads of this, is those guys really like each other. And I don't think that was manufactured at all, because they do look, if nothing else, they're not going to recreate CM Punk walking through the curtain with tears through his eyes, coming down from his eyes.
Yeah.
And those conversations, I firmly believe those are real
absolutely.
Conversations.
The stuff at Gorilla position.
Oh, yeah.
The two most interesting things, I'm sorry to kind of
go ahead.
Tangent here. The two most interesting things I gathered from this were, as mentioned, the producers' roles and everything. It's not something we kind of knew, but to see it is something else. And there's that great bit where there's a head of Elimination Chamber, the competitors in the men's match all huddle up with Hayes and Bobby Roode, and they're all getting their ideas in about how to put it together. And
who's the guy that comes up with the finish?
It's Punk who comes up with the finish, and
everybody loves it. Yeah.
Everybody loves it. There's that. And to see how Triple H relates to and specifically motivates talent.
Mm-hmm.
I found that those two things being the most interesting things coming out of this. And, we could speculate what the atmosphere, how much it differs from when Vince was running things. And I imagine the atmosphere is nearly a 180.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Oh, yeah. Yeah.
Because apart from Abyss seemingly worried he's getting in trouble for the main event of the Netflix premiere going 2 minutes long, it's like it seems to be a very supportive atmosphere.
Yeah.
Everybody's really happy when something goes off well.
Yeah.
Everybody's really congratulatory. There doesn't seem to be any real sniping at each other.
Yeah.
It seems like everybody's working towards the same goal and not necessarily looking out for themselves. Of course, this is heavily edited, manipulated to present WWE in the most positive light they can.
Yeah, I mean, we'll go over some of the stuff that it was kind of like, really? What, you glossed over that? We'll go over that in a second here, but But one of the standouts, I have like a list of things that sort of stand out to me, and one of them on that list is Bruce Pritchard seems like a joyless bastard.
He does. Mirthless.
You know, it's not unlike when you and I went through film school. Who's the bastard on set, Larson?
It's the assistant director.
It's the assistant director, exactly.
It's the number 2 person on the set, behind other than the director,
Director's got to be nice guy because he's playing nicely. He's got to be the mediator. He's got to be the glue that keeps everybody together. The assistant director is the person who's whipping people into, hey, get over here, do this now, you do this. They're the designated asshole.
Yeah.
And so that, I feel, watching this, is the Bruce Pritchard role.
And who was Abyss most worried about upsetting?
Bruce Pritchard, exactly. He was like, I just want to make sure that guy's happy. And it was almost uncomfortable.
It was because he asked another producer. He's like, you don't think I'm in trouble, do you?
Regal, I think. Was it Regal?
Yeah, it was Regal. Yeah,
it was Regal. Yeah. And he was like, no, Sonny Jim, I think you did great.
Yeah.
And he was like, no, you're fine. Are you happy with it? I'm fine. I'm happy with it. I just want to make sure that guy's happy with it. And Bruce would not look him in the eye. Because Bruce was pissed, and I think that's sort of his job.
The only thing he said, it was overwritten, it was overproduced. That's what he said to him.
And to the producer, he says that.
Yeah.
So no, you're right. The producer, it's like, honestly, out of all the roles there, producer made me the most anxious. Whether it was Jason Jordan producing the Women's Elimination Chamber, which that was another highlight. Was in the writer's room when they're talking about Jade and Naomi, and then going past Liv Morgan and Bianca, when they're talking about that, and then you can see it, and it plays out exactly how they're talking about it. And who knows, maybe they filmed that writer's room segment after it all went down. I don't know. But if that was true to what happened in terms of how they, concocted it, gosh darn, like that was really fun to see. And then to see Jason Jordan produce it, but to sit there and relay there's so much chaos relaying the info to the refs, who also, God, that's a nightmare job, is referee. They're getting the info relayed to them from the producer. The producer's on the hot seat because they got Bruce and Triple H sitting next to them. It's that, to me, I was like, man, talk about unsung heroes. We usually just think of, when I thought about producers before, I was just like, okay, they sit back there with the talent. They're like, okay, you do this, you do that. How about this? What do we do here? But they sit there with the headset on, relaying information, sweating their asses off, hoping that, like, they have no control over what the talents, especially when you got main event talent out there.
Yeah. And so much, it seems, of the responsibility for hitting time is laid at the producer.
Yeah.
But once the talent gets out in the ring, like we saw with the Netflix premiere with Punk and Seth, and once they realize, all right, we're running long on time, we need to cut. We just start cutting stuff.
Yeah.
And to
cut
see
the
everybody,
device. Yeah.
Everybody have to adjust. I just realized I said Ryan Dunn was in the writer's room. Ryan Dunn is from Jackass. I'm thinking of Ryan Ward, I believe his name is.
R.I.P., brother. Yeah.
Anyways, that stuff's really interesting. And it's, for a broader wrestling audience, that might just be a detail. But for people like us who are really interested in process, especially the creative process, the huddle ahead of the men's chamber match, super interesting stuff. The little bits in the writer's room we got. Going into this, I didn't expect a ton of stuff in the writer's room, but what I got left me wanting more. And whether it was kind of manufactured to fit in what happened after the fact and kind of recreated conversations, or genuine, whatever the case may be, that creative process is stuff that I find the most interesting.
What was your take on we glossed over it, the debate over, hey, who should win that main event? Everybody says Punk. Everybody said Punk should win the Rumble. Then who should win that night one main event? Punk.
It was Ed Koskey both times.
And Ed Koskey says, Heyman's going to go with Seth. And Triple H was like, yeah, Heyman goes with Seth, but Punk battles through it. Now, we saw it. It was kind of interesting.
No, initially it was Punk wins, but Heyman turns on Punk to go back with Roman.
Right. Yeah. Because he didn't want Roman to be left with nothing. And so it was interesting to me because we saw something like that in the women's chamber match where Bianca suffers this huge emotional, devastating moment and battles through to win. And similarly, it seemed like Triple H wanted to see Punk suffer through this big emotional moment and then battle through to win. And Koski says, and he says, so yeah, Punk should win this. And he says, I don't know, it feels like Seth should. And Punk says, Triple H says, and then Heyman goes with Seth, and he says, but then Roman's not left with anything. He's not a babyface, not a heel. He's got no family. And Koski says, that's interesting to me. And then Triple H takes a big giant bunch of ice and puts it in his mouth and starts chewing it.
Yeah, I mean, evidently.
But
he went with Koski's ideas, and
yeah, and
that's
I
what we
thought,
got.
and I thought that was really interesting. Let me ask you this.
Sure.
We'll pivot to the thing that. Well, first up, let me mention this. SummerSlam, of course, is 2 days from
weekend.
now.
Yeah,
Saturday and Sunday. We'll be doing our live watch along, so be sure to join us for that. Also, the Big Predictions Challenge is starting at SummerSlam. It heads into Forbidden Door and, of course, Clash in Paris. The prizes are on the line. If I can find my prize thing, it's around here somewhere. The prize on the line is a new custom color jersey.
One of a kind, too.
It's one of a kind. This is not going to go on sale anywhere. And then given that, I don't know, I kind of feel like this is going to be the last hurrah for John Cena's title run, even though I guess it might not be. We've got some shirts here. We got a shirt that says Last Real Predictions Champion and a bucket hat for the summertime that says Last Real Predictions Champion. So this is the August Predictions prize right there. And you can get involved by clicking join right here, youtube.com/Stephen Larson, becoming a channel member, or you can go to patreon.com/Stephen Larson, become a Friendo Club setup tier reward member there. Either way you do it, you get the same thing, access to our old bonus episodes and the question threads to the recap episodes. So if you want to get in, because this weekend it goes down for August if you want a chance at winning that jersey right there. Let me ask you this. The whole segment with Triple H says, we're working with The Rock. Mm-hmm. And he's going to be, he tells the writer's room, Rock's going to be at Chamber. Or he's going to be before Chamber, he's going to be on the SmackDown, and then there's going to be a thing at Chamber. So, what do we do? And they dance around the whole like John Cena heel turn, what are we going to do thing here. Triple H even says, you asked me who came up with it first? I don't really know, which I think is bullshit. And he sort of pushes off, and Bruce Pritchard, et cetera, et cetera. And so they kind of dance.
It's Bruce that takes credit for posing.
Bruce takes credit for it. So they sort of dance around the entire scenario, which I understand why, because it really feels like it's an interesting dynamic, because it does feel like there are some pretty interesting, and I would imagine cutthroat politics at play backstage, where The Rock and Brian Gewirtz are trying to get their way. Triple H, who's already adept at getting his way, has to figure things out. Nick Khan is probably, trying to make things easier. I'm sure Ari Emanuel comes into it as well. But they're not going to talk about how that shit's made. They're going to talk about their clean, sanitized, we're all one big happy family way.
Yep.
One of the interesting tidbits, according to Brian Gewirtz, was Cody was in a feud with Kevin Owens at the time. And in that scenario, Kevin Owens would have beat Cody Rhodes at Royal Rumble, where they had
no. It was what was going to happen was The Rock would come out the end of the Elimination Chamber.
Yeah.
Ask Cody, do you give me your soul or not? Cody would say no, and then The Rock would book an impromptu match.
Oh, that's right, the impromptu match.
Which would see Kevin Owens come out and then beat Cody and win the title.
That's right. So you'd have Kevin Owens walking into WrestleMania, I'm assuming, to take on John Cena, or would that be Cody Rhodes?
That was all unclear, because it seemed like the pitch for some of this stuff didn't necessarily get past the moment. I mean, as we saw at WrestleMania play out, didn't get past the end of Elimination Chamber. What were we going to do next?
Yeah.
But yeah, they had this whole graphic sequence where it starts with that, and then it's
like storyboards they have.
Yeah. It's Triple H, it's Pritchard, it's Koski,
It was
Nick
a very,
Khan.
it was a very like Netflix true crime
Yeah, it was.
breakdown of how it works.
It was. And so, they start mulling over that idea, decide not to go with the Kevin Owens impromptu title win because I'm guessing the situation would be A, title changed so close to Mania. B, they really probably want to do Cody versus Cena, so you'd have to have a situation where Cody gets the title back from Kevin Owens between Chamber and Mania. Maybe they thought that was too much.
The funny thing is, I like that because they did mention, well, I want to have a title change this close to Mania, and I'm like, didn't EO win it right before WrestleMania?
I know.
But maybe they're like, we already had this, plan for EO. We're not going to do
That
this
could be
twice.
That could be. And then apparently there's all these discussions happening about essentially how to best work in The Rock's appearance at Elimination Chamber, which was done for business reasons to sell tickets.
Oh yeah.
To make it work creatively. Mm-hmm. And as we saw, the end result didn't necessarily work creatively in terms of The Rock's involvement in the whole John Cena heel turn. But it led them to a number of discussions about what should happen, because they wanted a huge moment to happen at the end of Elimination Chamber. They knew that The Rock was going to be there. It makes sense for The Rock's appearance there to motivate said huge moment. And it should probably have some ramifications for the title match, undisputed title match at WrestleMania. That seemed to be all the kind of the prerequisites for what's going on there.
Yeah. Yeah.
And eventually, as you mentioned, it was Bruce Pritchard who said, well, let me just turn John Cena heel.
Yeah.
As it was depicted here. And what was it? What I found interesting, another bit was there's a bit before Chamber where Triple H and The Rock are talking. They're going over how things are going to go. Triple H asks him, now, do you think this is something you and Cena had worked out in advance, or is this, a spur of the moment decision from Cena? And The Rock's like, oh no, this is something we worked out in advance. This is a premeditated setup and turn. Which again, even furthers the idea that The Rock should have been involved afterwards too.
So I'll counter with this. There's two things. I'll address that one first. At the very least, when John Cena does his promo the next time we see him, he fucking says it, because then you dispel the idea that The Rock needs to be around.
Yep.
He needs to say, this is not an alliance. The Rock came to me, said, I know Cody's going to say no, and I want to stick it to him, but here's what I have to offer for you. Some assistance at WrestleMania or some shit like that. I don't know.
Yeah. It needs to be addressed in some capacity.
It had to be addressed, because then everybody's expectation for WrestleMania was The Rock. And if it was simply something as, I have a one-time business arrangement with The Rock, and you guys will see what that is at WrestleMania. And then we get Travis Scott, which maybe the idea is we can read between the lines. But even in this, it wasn't really spelled out that, oh, this is going to be the thing. My second point is this. What's most fascinating to me about that whole mess of a situation with Triple H and The Rock, and people claim there's a big power struggle, is that even if they did it for the cameras, they manufactured it for the cameras, and I'm sort of waffling as to whether or not they are. The moment you're talking about, when Triple H and The Rock sit there and they discuss how is this going to go down, the fact that Rock and his people didn't get their way, and he still, he agreed to do Elimination Chamber, I guess contractually or whatever, and he still sits there with Triple H, and even if that's a manufactured conversation because the cameras are right there, or if it's a candid moment where they're actually talking about it, they always seem on the surface to be cool with each other. At the very least, cool with each other.
Yeah.
And every time you see them backstage together, hey man, yeah, it's fucking great, man. Oh, it's fucking great. It's fucking great. It's fucking great. What do you think that is simply 30 years now of those guys learning to have a certain relationship that includes, hey, this guy's going to try to get his way. I'm going to try to get my way. And whoever gets their way, that's just the way it goes. And we all have to participate in what happens next.
Yeah, 1,000%. I think that's what it is. Even going back, if you go back to when Triple H lost NXT, I'm sure even going back that far, heck, going back into his wrestling days. All right, I'm going to go make my case. I'll pull whatever levers of power I have backstage to get my way. Doesn't work out. All right, well, still got it. The story continues. The story never ends.
Didn't they try to boot Rock out of Triple H
Try to get the main event spot at WrestleMania 15. Yeah.
Yeah, right. And Rock got it. Yeah.
Yeah. Yep.
Yeah.
Yep.
That to me is fascinating. That they don't seemingly take the shark aspect of the wrestling business so personally that they can't still, hey, the show goes on, we're here, we love each other, but also this dude's always coming after my job. He wants Brian Gewirtz. And by the way, I'm just going to say this. I think the Cena heel turn was probably the right move. I think that there was obviously a lot of stuff they could have done different, but the actual moment was awesome. But the idea of Kevin Owens, if The Rock had gotten his way, I think it's entirely possible The Rock would have been along for the ride a little bit more and maybe have been at WrestleMania. And the idea of Kevin Owens and The Rock having segments together where they're on the same page, I kind of fucking love, and I'm sort of sad that we didn't get that.
Yeah.
And I love that Owens was their guy. I think that is really cool.
That is cool. And, during these writers' rooms meetings, they're going over, especially in the lead up to the decision to have Jay win the Rumble, what are the Mania main events going to be? What are the top matches? And initially it was Punk Gunther for the World Heavyweight Championship. And then it was Cena Cody, going back to these early meetings as it's depicted.
And then Reigns and Seth, yeah.
Yeah, seeing the initial lineup for WrestleMania was pretty intriguing. And then once they decided to have Jay win the Rumble, there's this interesting dynamic, and it's really emphasized in the show, and I wonder if it was anywhere near as large of an issue it actually was in reality, which is apparently Jay Uso's cardio is not the best because, as he put it, as other people put it, he was getting blown up during his entrance, and by the time the match would start, he would be gassed.
This, to me, was personally hilarious, and yet you feel so much anxiety for Jay Uso when they're talking about this stuff, because there seems to be like some subtext of you get gassed when you're in the ring, and that ain't good. But also, can you handle the pressure of being the guy? And it's not real. Let's be honest. It's not the guy because the guy is the Cody title. But being the world champion, even on Raw, is a big deal, and they all consider it a very big deal. So and I feel like the cardio is kind of a metaphor, whether intentional or not, for the pressure of, can you say yes to everything like they said Cena did?
Yeah, it's not just, I agree with the metaphor aspect, but it's also a bit of a metaphor, as Jay explains, as a tag, up to this point, pretty much a tag wrestler. He gets winded, he tags in his brother.
Yeah.
And so it's a metaphor not just for the pressures of potentially being world champion, being a singles wrestler after being a tag wrestler for basically the entirety of your career.
It is super interesting, but I still maintain Jay has got the most interesting character arc in like the history, at least modern history of wrestling, in 1985 and on, because of everything he went through with the bloodline. You got to think he brought a lot of that with him, but then the fan reaction to him, which was, we always claim, is earned because of the bloodline stuff.
Yep.
And the yeeting is simply an expression of that. It's not, people like the yeet, they don't like Jay. No, yeeting is a celebration of what Jay went through, and the fans inherently know that, whether they are able to recognize it, consciously or not. But I did think that, constantly harping on like, all right, man, by the time you get to the ring, you're blown up, and I'm like, I feel like a lot of people would be. It's a really elaborate entrance.
And then at Mania, he has to go not just an arena, but a stadium from the concourse.
This isn't the Warrior running to the ring. This is like the Warrior would be gassed by the third yeet, Like, this is a lot. And then pile on top of that, the tag wrestler situation where for 13 years, he was able to tag somebody else in, and he literally says, I had to do half the work.
Yeah.
No? Well, now you got to do all the work, buddy. We can pivot from that to another really interesting thing to me, and we sort of got into this with the Chelsea Green stuff to a degree, but also the Jay stuff, and that's, you really get an understanding. You know, you and I, we sit here and we talk about, put the title on this guy, they should put the title on this guy, et cetera, et cetera. But there is, like, in real time, you see people being examined, their push being examined. Mm-hmm. And you see, you know, oh, he's blown up. Jay goes over the top rope and he misses, you know, he lands too close and he hits the apron. He botches that move.
A little short in a suicide dive, yeah.
Well, to us, we're like, yeah, man, that's probably a tough thing to do. To the back, it's like, oh, that's evidence that this might not work. Mm-hmm. Like, one moment signifies so much more for them. Mm-hmm. And it did kind of put into more greater context, you know, when you think, oh, why aren't they pushing this person? Why aren't they pushing this person? Why aren't they doing this? And this seems like Captain Obvious stuff, but like there's a lot that goes into it. And so when you see like things like, oh, Chelsea's not getting the push now that she got then, it makes you wonder, I wonder why that is. You know, whether it's her fault, whether it's they just see something else somewhere else. Whatever the situation is, I thought that it was pretty heartbreaking to see that she didn't get to do the Canada show.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, it was interesting to see the debate over, you know, oh, who's getting pushed now, who should get pushed. You know, evidently everybody thinks CM Punk should be pushed to the absolute moon, which who can blame him? The guy's incredibly popular.
Yeah.
And he's got, I mean, that was another thing that was interesting is just watching his relationship with Triple H and them being so much on the same page. Yeah. That was interesting too.
And it was interesting hearing Triple H talk about, you know, what was kind of the wedge between them in the past and what was apparently, 2019 was it? Where there was apparently overtures made to Punk, or by Punk to WWE some way to bring him back. And Triple H says, essentially, he was difficult to deal with and communicate with back in 2014 when he left. And he said they had that meeting in 2019, whatever it was, and it was the same thing. He hadn't changed. But when they met or talked in 2023, and it was a realization seemingly from both parties, things were different now, and they can move forward and do business together. And it wasn't like a thing where he really spent a lot of time talking about it in detail.
Yeah.
But you knew by how he talked about it exactly what he meant. And so that was interesting to see that apparently over the course of like a conversation almost 2 years ago, they managed to talk out whatever issues they had, patch things up, and move forward not only with a pretty seemingly successful business partnership relationship, but it seems like they actually get along.
Really well.
Yeah.
It's, I mean, you know, what obviously is left out is that two men both suffered or both went through a lot in that time. Mm-hmm. When you think of Triple H and everything he went through, losing NXT, his heart condition, and then Vince is gone.
Yeah.
And then obviously CM Punk's stint in AEW. Yep. And those, you know, it's interesting to me that, you know, I mean, dude, we're constantly evolving and changing, and our priorities change, and our, you know, like Triple H mentions, you know, the way we communicate and our philosophies change as well. But seemingly what those two guys went through, it's funny because when you go through something that is obviously as much of a roller coaster as what they've gone through. Yeah, and I can speak to this, and I know you can too. The older we are, because we're like Punk's age, and we're not that much younger than Triple H. When you go through certain things at a certain point in your life, you know, like for example, for you and I know losing the Enforcer was like an incredibly traumatic thing for us. That you and I, you know, I feel like our relationship, as strong as it's always been, going back 30 years, you know, I think. For me, speaking for me, like my priorities became much more clear, and what matters to me became much more clear. Losing him, losing my dad, losing my dog last year, you know, it really sharpens you up and makes you think, God, what really matters in life?
Yeah,
you know,
and even along with all that, going back a little bit further, having a family, having your own family.
1,000%. Yeah, absolutely.
You know, that makes you really kind of focus in on what's really important in life and what your priorities should be.
Yeah. And so I really understood. It's like, yeah, you don't think, oh, well, it's 2019. But no, it's like the stuff that Punk went through in AEW, And what Triple H went through with all that stuff, the heart condition and Vince and all that stuff, you can kind of understand why maybe they would find common ground now after all that stuff they've been through. I mean, and on top of that, they're both incredibly motivated people to accomplish the goals that they want to accomplish. You know, CM Punk's reputation took a nasty hit after AEW, and so of course he's going to be motivated coming to WWE, and he found a perfect situation where Vince wasn't there anymore to, you know, blast him with his weird whims. Instead, he's got a Triple H who, you know, wants to be collaborative, and he's got the book now. He's got, you know, the control now.
Yeah.
And he's a guy who's like, man, TKO has knighted me, if you will.
Yeah.
And I have to make the most of that because I've been wanting to do this for 30 years now. Yeah. So yeah, I thought that was really interesting when you look at it.
Yeah. They did have a bit of a segment about the train wreck of a segment between Charlotte and Tiffany in advance of WrestleMania. Charlotte says she kind of got shook by the crowd being so loud and boisterous with their booing, kind of took her off her game a little bit. And, you know, there's discussion from Michael Hayes saying, yeah, Charlotte was stepping all over Tiffany's line. They have the unscripted line at the end referencing Charlotte's divorce. And then Triple H is talking to people backstage asking, was that in the script? They say no. So he's sitting back at his position, at gorilla position, says, yeah, Charlotte's upset about it. Says Tiffany needs to understand that's not how we do things. She needs to go and apologize, and they need to get on the same page. And evidently they did, because after their match at WrestleMania, it was professional and friendly even. Like, are you all right? You're cool? And I guess to a certain degree in pro wrestling, that has to be the dynamic after a match, because you're putting so much trust in the other person who you're in the ring with to, you know, keep you safe. Mm-hmm. And I would be shocked if the first, you know, if it's not the first thing, one of the first things out of anybody's mouth following a match is, are you all right?
Yeah.
Especially a match like theirs at Mania where, you know, Tiffany's teeth got all busted up.
Charlotte is one of the most sympathetic characters or performers. Ashley Fleer is one of the most, you know, you feel for all the vitriol she gets online and for her performing the way she performs and her being placed in the creative situation she's been placed in, where they ask her after that match, what's next for you? I don't know. I guess I'm going to climb the mountain again.
Well, even before that, at some point, she's asked her, like, are you a face or a heel at this point? And she pretty much says, I don't know.
Yeah. Yeah. Because they didn't give her anything good.
No.
When she came back, and it's like, now we're finally getting a little, you know, some actual good stuff with her and Alexa, which, yeah, it's just a partnership to see if they could be friends. But we're getting to see that side of her, that it's like, oh, this is a human being, you know, not this, you know, what the queen who doesn't really have like an actual personality. It's just wins a lot.
Yeah.
So yeah, I thought that was, and then the little conversation they have about shit in your pants. Of course, seemingly they put that in there just for us because that was pretty great.
It was pretty funny. And
she was like, and Punk is like, hey, Charlotte, did you ever shit your pants in the ring? And she's like, well, if I did, I wouldn't tell you. She's like, I peed a little.
It was interesting because you had Ivar, Punk, and Adam Pearce, TJ
Wilson. Yeah.
They're out there and like, who hasn't shit their pants during the match?
Right. Yeah.
And that's what motivates Punk to ask Charlotte. And she's like, no. And even if I did, I wouldn't say anything. Yeah. And she tells a story about how Triple H
put a Snickers bar in Ric Flair's trunks
before a match against Chris Jericho. And everybody's like, well, wouldn't you be able to tell that it was a candy bar as opposed to a piece of poop?
Yeah.
Like, you know, the look of it, the smell of it. And Charlotte had a great line.
Yeah.
It's where he says, well, maybe my shit doesn't stink.
Yeah, and then everybody starts.
Everybody gets it, and everybody laughs. Yeah,
it's such a great moment. Like she's so, and you can. It's like, dude, she's literally been around there since she was like a child, and so everybody, you know, she's just that in the DNA of the WWE right now.
Yeah.
So it's like, yeah, you know, let's get more of that.
Yeah.
In the actual character, and I wonder if maybe something like this might make them look at what's appealing about characters. Rhea Ripley, for example. And that's the other thing I want to bring up here is they did a whole episode on women's wrestling.
Mm-hmm.
And you and I have talked about this, especially over the past couple of months, where you look at the landscape of WWE right now, and the future of the men's division is such like, it's really unclear. You've got the main event scene right now. I would hazard to guess are dudes who are not going to be the main event scene or in wrestling in 2030, 5 years from now. You look at how overloaded, and Triple H makes a point of saying this to Shane Helms in the show when he talks about, you go down to developmental, and for every 5 women that just has it, that have glommed onto it, that have understood it, there's like 1 dude. You look at the women's division on Main now. You look at the women's division in NXT now, which is their future. It would not shock me if 5 years from now, it ain't going to be Braun Breaker main eventing. It's going to be the women's division main eventing, maybe nights 1 and 2. Now, I could be wrong about that because sometimes you can catch fire with certain people. And if they want the men's undisputed title to be the thing still, then I guess they might stick to that. But if they go with the same philosophy they have now, which is the men who have been around, who have built that stock with the fan base, Roman Reigns, Seth Rollins, Cody Rhodes, CM Punk, those are the guys that have such brand recognition with the fan base, and those are the marquee names. In 5 years, 3 of those dudes probably aren't going to be around anymore.
Yep.
And you've got right now Rhea Ripley, she'll be here in 5 years. Bianca Belair, she'll be here in 5 years. Becky, Charlotte, I don't know. Charlotte's going to be around for a while. Becky will probably be around for a while unless Hollywood really gets her.
I mean, then plus you got Roxanne, you got Stephanie, you got Julia.
You've got it. You can keep on talking. I mean, you've got a long Io. You've got Oscar,
Tiffany and Jade. Yeah,
right.
Yeah.
Jordan Grace. She's not even up yet.
Yeah.
You have got Blake Monroe. You have got a star-studded lineup of women who are going to be incredibly relevant, even more so than they already are in 5 years. And on the men's side of things, I don't know.
They have not done a good job of developing main eventers in the men's division. I mean, you could probably name 2 people right now in the men's division that you could see maybe main eventing WrestleMania in 5 years, other than the constants these days. And it's Jacob Fatu and it's Braun Breaker.
Yeah, you can go to NXT and say, okay, well, if they strap the rocket on Obafemi, on Trick Williams,
there's a chance.
There's a chance, but it's unproven. We have proof right now. Vaquer's not even on the SummerSlam card. I mean, she's going to do the Paris thing, but she's not even on the SummerSlam card. And she gets some of the biggest reactions.
Yeah.
And to see, and again, maybe it's a conversation that was manufactured where Triple H is putting over the women. I don't think so. This dude, I mean, from his time in NXT, this guy was about building up the women's division because he knows it's good business. Every time I've got wrestling on, there is one thing that determines whether or not Lacey or Bama sticks around for it, and that's if women are on the screen. Bama was paying attention. I was watching this. Bama was paying attention to this because John Cena was on. Everybody knows John Cena.
Yeah.
But the women, it would not shock me if they evolved the product so that the women are going to be the big draws 5 years from now. And to be honest, it kind of matters just what kind of creative energy are they going to put into it? That's what matters.
Yeah.
But it would not shock me if they started looking at their metrics in a couple of years and they realize, okay, well, we don't have this guy, we don't have this guy, we don't have this guy. So this is hot right here. The women are hot. They're naturally going to be transitioning to that top spot. I don't know if that's a plan. I don't know if they've thought about it. I don't know. But right now, if you look at the rosters, that's a natural assumption to make.
Yeah.
The only thing that stops you from making that assumption is they're not dudes. That's the only thing, is they're not dudes. And are they going to stick to dudes at the top?
Yeah, that's the question. That's the question. But then you see Triple H, he has that conversation with Rhea after her match at Mania and says to her, he's trying to bolster her confidence because she talks about having panic attacks prior to the last 2 WrestleManias. Didn't happen this past year. But during the course of either that conversation or earlier one, he pretty much says to her, "You're as good at this as anybody is."
Yeah. Yeah.
You know.
Yeah.
And throughout, like, Bianca Belair is positioned within this show and spoken about as one of the top stars in the entirety of the company.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, right. Yeah. Yeah.
You know?
Men or women, regardless. Yeah.
Yeah.
Stephanie makes the same point about Charlotte. She says,
Yes.
Not factoring in, male or female, Charlotte is one of the best wrestlers that we've ever seen. And I believe, man, you look at a bunch of her matches and it's like, yeah, I kind of feel that. I understand that. So yeah, dude, it is going to be interesting to see where they're at 5 years from now, because number one, Triple H loves to take his time with things. And if they're unable to crack some real magic with Braun, Jacob, Oba, Trick, Javon maybe, if they're unable to crack that, which is a tall task at the pace they work, at the creatively the pace they work.
Well, then you see, granted, it's not with Triple H in charge. It's not like a 20-year sample size, but you look over the last 3 years, whatever it's been, and again on main roster, you could say the two kind of real successes in terms of building somebody up, and really, if you trace it back to from day one to Performance Center, who has it been other than Braun?
Yeah, right. Yeah. There has
a lot of the other success stories coming out of NXT for years all established their brands outside WWE before coming to WWE.
Yeah.
Or a majority of them.
Yeah.
So who are people who are, like day one PC recruits in the men's division who eventually become main eventers? I think it's a pretty short list.
It is. It absolutely is. I mean, is he going to wait until... is he going to try to poach from AEW like their main event guys? But even then, it's like they still have to prove themselves within the WWE way of doing things, which is sort of like you look at Ethan Page and Ricky Saints, and it's like, I know it's been kind of a short, it hasn't been a short period of time for Ethan Page, and he's not the best example because he wasn't an AEW main eventer.
No.
And neither really was Ricky Saints. But yeah, I don't know. I don't think there's going to be another Cody coming from AEW to WWE. And even with Cody, it took 3 years to, he had a rocket strapped to him, but he was like the perfect storm situation for them.
Yeah.
So yeah, I don't know. It's going to be interesting to see where the company's at in 5 years, but it would not shock me at all if it was a very, very, female heavy main event scene in 5 years.
Yeah.
A couple other small notes here, because that's kind of everything that I have. Another aspect of this that is just always interesting to me is Roman Reigns is always so guarded with these things. Never really breaks character all that much. And is not really featured on these things very much.
It's interesting that, Cody was a regular interview subject, Punk, Rhea, Bianca, Charlotte, no Seth Rollins, no Roman.
Rollins. Yeah.
There was a lot of, Becky makes one appearance in the Mania episode. Otherwise, I know she wasn't there, because this goes from basically Netflix premiere to Mania. She wasn't really there that whole time. I get that. But like no Bailey.
Yeah.
It seemed clear there was certain stories of individual performers they wanted to focus on, and didn't really talk to people outside for the most part, apart from those stories.
A couple interesting notes about the preliminary WrestleMania schedule, which to a degree might inform what happens this weekend. One thing just stuck out to me that I didn't even notice before, and that was Jade Cargill versus Nia Jax for the women's title.
Yeah.
Jade would have won that match.
Yeah.
Makes me think I might add some more confidence points to that one. They were going to do Rhea Ripley versus Bianca Belair. That was penciled in. That's pretty interesting for the women's world title. Bianca, her story in this was like, she's talking for her character. I want to get that Undertaker streak. Gunther versus Punk was supposed to go down.
You think Punk would have won that for sure?
Everybody was like, Punk wins a Rumble. Punk wins a Rumble.
Yeah.
Roman Reigns. I mean, I wonder. And you sort of also. I was talking earlier about like people getting push and de-push in real time. If the Jey Uso losing back to Gunther situation was, yeah, you're a no gas all breaks. I kind of curious about that now.
Well, then we heard that that was something planned.
Yeah,
going as far back as the victory. So
yeah.
who knows?
Yeah. Let's see here. What else? This was it. Becky and Charlotte versus Asuka and Kairi Sane for the tag titles.
Yeah.
That's a super alternate universe version.
Yeah. Yeah.
I always like Bad Bunny versus Dom Mysterio. That could have been cool.
Yeah, that would have been fun.
Rey Mysterio with Travis Scott versus Chad Gable. And then Drew McIntyre versus Braun Breaker with Stone Cold as the referee. That's a weird one.
That is a strange one. That's a really strange one.
Yeah. So yeah, I don't know. Kind of interesting. What ifs? I mean, this it's literally just written on a whiteboard, so it's just and it's gone.
Yep, exactly. Yeah. It wasn't like it was printed on paper.
Right, exactly. Yeah. Oh man. Anyways, any last words about Unreal, or are we gonna wrap it?
I'm assuming, based on how well this does with the Netflix viewing audience, may determine if they do another season.
Oh, it wouldn't shock me.
But,
yeah.
Given, apparently, according to Fightful, WWE's pretty pleased with the buzz coming out of it. So, no, I guess it wouldn't shock me either if they decided to run another season, probably kind of in the same time frame. It makes sense to culminate at Mania as their top show of the year. So,
what would you like to see different or more of, less of?
I want to see one of those in the writers' rooms, an all-night session of them
unedited.
just like... Yeah, just hashing things out. That's
post a 6-hour writing session.
Yeah,
that's what I want to see.
A live stream from the meeting.
The thing that I'd like to see less of, to be honest with you, is just the recapping of what happened in the ring.
Yes.
Like they did long, and I like the whole like that weird shit they do with the Royal Rumble where the camera goes up and it's like the one thing, which I'm still like, I try to wrap my fucking head around that. I'm like, what the fuck? How do they do that? I
guess they do it with AI. That's just what I guess.
Yeah, that could be. I don't know. But yeah, I could use less of the recapping of stuff, and I just want more. I want more, even if it's a facsimile of real shit that happens backstage. I want more of that shit,
Exactly.
The interactions are always funny when, Punk is talking to Gunther and what's his face, Ludwig. That made me laugh too. Yeah. It's just those little things. There's a lot of Punk in this.
There is a lot of Punk. A lot.
Anyways, let us know what you guys thought about WWE Unreal in the comments below. Hopefully you'll join us for SummerSlam. Our watch along is going down right here at youtube.com/Steven Larson, and of course over at twitch.tv/Steven Larson as well. So that's going to do it for this episode of WWE Unreal review.
Review.
So, we'll see you guys around.
Bye.